the one that needs the drink.
Maraweka, Nananiatsa, Eric Tippeconnic. Greetings, my name is Eric Tippeconnic. I'm a member of the Comanche Nation. It's my distinct honor to be here tonight to speak with Jhane Myers, the creative producer of Pray. Can we give her another round of applause? That was awesome. And I have had the pleasure of meeting recently Virgil Ortiz, an incredibly talented, creative artist who plays around in a multitude of mediums. And both of these individuals sitting next to me are who I want to be when I grow up. So I'm so happy to be here and so honored to be here. The first thing that I would like to ask, the obvious question for me is, both of you brilliantly utilize science fiction to reach audiences that might not typically be drawn to Native culture and history. Is that on purpose? How did that happen? Can you kind of take us through that?
Sure, absolutely, it's on purpose, which I, as a creative producer, I imagine like Native people everywhere, right? Even in a franchise, even in sci-fi, even in action and adventure. And I think the brilliance of Dan Trachtenberg was to think out of the box, and thank God for Google people, thank God for Google, because he and the writer, Patrick Asen, what they did is they Googled who were the most fierce Indian tribe. Comanches popped up. I was like, yes. Who is the most, who are the best fighters? Boom, Comanches pop up. So that was incredible. So when it got to me as a producer, I just saw like, oh my gosh, there's so many things. There's so many things that we can do. And so much of our culture, of our lifestyle, even just watching it tonight, because I've only watched it about 100 times. But I see things in there that, you don't normally see. How many of you have seen natives in films? And how many have you ever seen natives brush their teeth in a film? This film does it. She's brushing her teeth in the morning when she wakes up after her big rabbit dinner the night before. And, those things come out of creative conversations, because one day Dan looks at me, and when I'm on set, I wear this little necklace, and it has a knife in it. It's a knife sheath, and it has this little knife, and they always make fun of it. That knife's so little, what are you going to do with it? And we used it so much on the set. But I think Dan looked at me one day, and he goes, don't be offended, but did Indians brush their teeth? And I was like, of course we did. And he was like, but how? Like with a toothbrush? And I said, no. And I took my little knife off, and I cut off a little willow, and then hit the end so it kind of looked like a brush, right? And I was like, look, like this. And he was like, oh my God. And so he handed that to our props person. He goes, I need 20 of these. So they were off on the side making toothbrushes. So, I mean, it's just those kind of things that people don't imagine, because Indians are villainized, Native people are villainized, and we were bad, but not that bad. And just to see, those little things like that and being able to put them in, to me, just reimagines everything. I mean, it's like, now probably some little kid somewhere is like, oh, Indians didn't brush their teeth, and another little kid says, yes, they did, and this is what they did. And, it's just those little stereotypes, little subtle things that can change people's minds and that can break up that story.
Thank you. Virgil, can you explain to the audience, maybe someone who's seeing your work for the first time? I doubt that that's the case, but let's say they're seeing your work for the first time. Can you relay to them why you've chosen these futuristic images to relay something so vitally important to me as a historian, like something like the Pueblo Revolt, that I think all Americans should learn about? But the reality is that very few Americans are probably even aware that this happened, and it's one of the most consequential events in Native history. It's the only revolt in which colonizing force was expelled from the Americas for a significant period of time. And so it's so important to me as a historian. So can you relate to us why you've infused that story and chose to tell it through science fiction or futuristic imagery.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I feel there's two reasons I'm here on this earth is to make sure that our traditional clay works don't die out from Cochiti Pueblo, and it is a dying art form. Because when I say traditional, it means that we go dig our own clay. We make everything from the earth, so everything is like done exactly how it was our ancestors years, like way back when. So to be able to commit the time to be able to use these methods and materials as a dying art form, because most people don't have the time to do this anymore. So to make that exciting, because I was born into a family of potters on my mother's side, so they were all potters, and our dad was a drum maker. So to have these artists as parents, I had the best professors, and to be able to follow in their footsteps and make sure it doesn't die out. I was like, how am I gonna get the next generation interested in clay works and pottery? So I said, okay, another reason why I feel I'm here is to educate globally about the 1680 Pueblo Revolt. What you mentioned is like most people don't know about it, and it's quite embarrassing when we were talking in the green room earlier about how many people when I do shows in Milan and Prague and Paris, all the Europeans know our history more than Americans know our history, so that's really sad and embarrassing. When I do shows here about the Pueblo Revolts, the first American Revolution, but nobody talks about it that way because of the bloodshed and the genocide that happened to our Pueblo people. So I said, okay, I have to write a movie script. We all love sci-fi, so that was like one of my favorite things as a kid, world building, seeing Star Wars when I was 7, Battlestar Galactica, Star Trek, all that. As you see everything all come together, so I said, okay, the heart and soul of everything I do is the clay work, but all the other different mediums that I do work in, like film and fashion. Thank you for wearing some Jhane tonight. Film and jewelry, fashion, anything that I can get my hands on to help tell this story. And that short that you've seen at the beginning is I use that like for all my exhibitions. Like one of them that's at the Autry Museum right now. They all have little short stories like that. So you could see the actual clay works within the short films, but it's always talking about the 1680 Pueblo Revolt, but just doing it in some way, in a way that is like more interesting to the next generation, and also social media. So that's why like now people of color stories are being told more and more, like the Black Panther movie franchise. So then this, it's coming to that fruition now, and what Jhane did with this movie is like so freaking cool. Like she took him out and not on a date. So it was like one of the best movies that I've seen from the Prey series.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. To move to something else just quickly, today, President Biden issued an apology for the failed U.S. boarding school policies that separated generations of Native children from their home communities in an effort to eradicate Native culture during a period of forced assimilation. One of the primary goals of this process was to eradicate Native languages. So as a historian, when I see something like we saw just now, I just want to shout from the rooftops that it didn't work. How important is something like this moving forward, inspiring perhaps younger people and sustaining our language moving forward? Do you realize what a big deal this is?
I think it opened a lot of doors for language, and one of my validations was recently when I watched Resball, and if you click on Resball on Netflix, it says Navajo dub available, and I'm like, because this proved, sometimes it's a proving point when you say, Dan always wanted to do this in a native language, and in Comanche, and the studio was like, no, we've never done we've never released a new movie in, in a native language, and I don't know how the viewers would take it, and I said, no, you really have, and they were like, you have, and this is tells you how old my career is. I said, yes. I said, when you did Apocalypto, it was in ancient Mayan, and they just kind of stopped, and then I thought, I don't care because they're not going to let us do it. And when we were shooting this, we were shooting it in Canada, and they asked, well, go ahead and just pepper the language within the scene. And I'm kind of like, so how would, like, it's just like a word here, a word there. And then they liked that. They said, it makes it more interesting. So we came back, and we had about 5 weeks until we turned the final cut into Hulu. And they asked to see us. They always asked to see us, so usually we were in trouble. And it was usually me. So I was like, oh, great. So we're on the Zoom, and they're like, Jhane, we have a compromise. And I was like, oh, God, what's a compromise? And I said, what? And they were like, how about if we do a Comanche dub? And I was like, absolutely. I have never done that, but I didn't say that. And I was like, sure. And they were like, you can do that, right? And I'm like, oh, we have 5 weeks. Yes, of course. And I said, well, what kind of budget do we have? And they were like, what kind of budget do you need? So it's like cat and mouse, And I'm like, so they had the language department, because Disney is so well-versed that they have a department that does nothing but dubbing. So I asked that guy, I said, well, what's the hardest language for you to dub? And he goes, Hebrew. I said, well, then if you're putting a movie into Hebrew, what does it usually cost? And he said, $100,000. I said, all right, give us $100,000. And they were like, okay, fine. But it was just like I had to hustle. I had to run back to Oklahoma. I got our top linguist. I got our director of the language program. We rented a studio. I took 2 people from the dubbing department, and we sat there, and we had to go through everything. So if you look at and actors have clauses in their contracts now where they get to be asked, do you want to recreate your role in Comanche? And they all did. So that was like, that adds an extra step, because we couldn't hire people that are used to doing, dubbing and voice actors. So it's like, oh my gosh. So I was really hustling to do that. But there was never a plan on how to put, a native language into a brand new movie. But now Prey showed that it can be done. And look, other people are doing it now. So I think now that really helps save our languages, because anytime that you need our culture to make this movie, then you need the language of that culture. So it's already paying back to me.
Thank you. Can you share with us? Yes. Now I am aware that part of the process of doing this film, you actually took this back to the Comanche people and had them view your work. Comment on it, give you suggestions. As a member of the Comanche Nation, thank you so much for doing that. But can you tell me what were some of their responses?
Sure. That's never happened either, because we had a lot of CG and there's a lot of effects. I've never worked with so many special effects like you have in this film. So while we were waiting for those to be done, we had just like the placeholders, like for some of the animals and for the predator. And I said, let's take it, back to Lawton and let the Comanche Nation see it. So we could screen it for 80 people. And so we invited our tribal council, we invited the preservation committee, the museum committee, the language department, and the elders. So between those 5 things, we had 80 people that came. And usually, and me being Comanche, if we see a movie, it's after it's done. So it's done, and if you don't like it, that's too bad, because it's already out there. And so this was the first time they've ever seen a film. And we took the executives with us, too. And Amber, I think Amber was with us. I don't think Tabe Dakota was with us, but Amber, and she was like, oh my gosh, we rented a theater about like this, and she went and sat way up at the top, and she said, don't tell people I'm here. If they don't like it, I don't want them to know that I'm sitting up here. And I was like, fine, so yeah, I'll take this. So I'm sitting down the front. But I told them, this is your time. Watch this movie. If there is something that you don't like, you better tell me now. Don't say it when the movie comes out, because you're all sitting here, and this is your one chance to say anything before we do a picture lock and we're done. And they were really happy that I brought it. And that we showed, and they said, nobody has ever came to us and showed us and screened a film before it was finished and it went out. So, and nobody really, either they were afraid of me, I don't think so. But, And then Amber, when everybody stood up and was clapping, they were clapping and they were luluing. Then finally Amber came down and I said, and we have Amber Mid-Thunder. Boy, everybody was clapping when they saw her because they didn't even know she was there. And it was a beautiful thing to be able to have. That's what happens when you have a seat at the table. When you have someone at the table, the rules can kind of be changed. And so that was a win for me to be able to take it home and let people see it.
Thank you. It's a great segue into my next question, actually. Considering historically that we have not had a seat at the table, do you feel that it's imperative that Native peoples and artists are the driving forces directing our own narratives?
It's very important that we are. This proves it, and like especially for women empowerment. So like the film that I'm writing is all about women empowerment. I see all of the women in our pueblos, how much work they do on a daily basis, especially keeping together the whole pueblo. Nobody talks about it a lot, but both my parents are moved on to the next world, but I would always remember our mom saying, like, hitting my dad, like, this is how you're supposed to do this. Like, you remember this part? So it was always the women that remembered everything of how to go on about it. And, you know, the next generation of Indigenous women growing up need a superhero, if you will, and to portray them as massive warriors like this is really, really important, I think.
Thank you. Virgil, can I ask you to, oh, I'm sorry. I need to pause and allow people to applaud you. Can you elaborate for the audience, and as a historian, this is a really important part of the film that you showed. Can you elaborate and tell the audience what the knotted cords represented?
The knotted cords that you've seen in the film is how Pope, the person that devised the plan to pull out the Pueblo Revolt, and how he did it was he gathered, right now there's 19 Pueblos left in New Mexico today, but in 1680 there was over 40 Pueblos. But once they welcomed the invaders, took care of them, then all went to hell. Then they said, okay, we have to really put a stop to this. How are we going to do this? Pope devised it by gathering all the Pueblo leaders from each Pueblo, telling them this is what the plan is. So they sent runners from the northern Pueblos to the southern Pueblos, all carrying knotted cords, the same amount of knots. And he instructed them to tell the Pueblo leaders to untie one knot every morning. So when the last knots were untied, then that's when all the Pueblos rose up, the kids, the females, the whole Pueblo, and they pushed out the invaders. Again, it's like one of the first American Revolution, but nobody talks about it because of what happened. So now, like what I'm doing and what I'm fueled by is to bring it to the world and for acknowledgement of who we are. We're still here, we're there then, now, forever, and creating it, this storyline happening simultaneously in 3 different time dimensions of 1680, 2180, and the present time. So it's us in the future, but we're all just vibrating at different levels right now, but it's still telling the same story, but allows me to create sci-fi characters and heroes like this. And it's, again, based on women empowerment. And she's the heroine of the movie. Her name is Ta'u, leader of the Blind Archers.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you're both flipping the traditional narratives that Hollywood has told about who we are as people, the traditional narratives that historians have written about Pueblo people, even the Pueblo Revolt, not necessarily considering the Pueblo perspective. The scene that was really touching to me in this film was at the end, as Naru is coming back, and she's bringing the head of the predator, and it's the young girl that's looking at her instead of the young boy looking at the man bringing, his prize into the village at the beginning of the film. You're flipping everything on its script. In Hollywood, like that's got to be such an amazing feeling to do, like, for a young girl who can look at you, look at this film and say, if I can see it, I can be it, right? And that's how it can be so inspiring. So is that all you? Was that you in that part of the film?
That was, you know, when Dan and Patrick wrote this, they had like a loose story, but that was like Dan being just brilliant and able to like listen and what do you think if we did this? We also made this during the pandemic. So wait, first, are there any studio executives here? We did not have any executive visits. So I come from like an independent film background. So when the border was closed to Canada where we shot this, we didn't have like a lot of visits from people. And I'm like, oh, we can go off book. We can, you know, go off, you know, once we have this locked, we can overshoot it. We can try different things. I mean, there were so many things that were kind of improv'd, including the, you know, Comanches don't whistle at night, right? So the whistle part, that was just, the scene was kind of like, Dan was like, something, it just needs something, it's falling flat. And I was in there watching it, and I was like, okay, I know what to do, and I ran out. And Amber is a Plains tribe, so most Plains people don't whistle at night because it calls spirits to you. Do you have that too?
Same thing, something similar.
Yeah, something similar. So I ran out, and I said, okay, this time when you deliver your line, turn your head and whistle. And she goes, I'm not whistling, you whistle for me. And I said, I'm not whistling. And so we had this one guy who was non-native that was our first AD. He came walking by and we're like, hey, come here. I said, can you whistle? And boy, he just started doing zippity-doo-dah. And I was like, wait, not that. Just give me one long whistle. After she delivers her line, she'll put her lips like she's whistling. And you do one long whistle as she turns her head. And he was like, okay. So he did it. He's still alive to this day, by the way. And but when he did it, when we got back here and we were editing, it was like Dan goes, oh my God, Jhane, the creepy whistle, the first cut, that's it. You know, I mean, it was, he said that's what made it. So that's kind of like part of creating, you know, and being an artist and being able to think creatively and then also culturally, because this is a time when we can put our cultural knowledge, which you can't learn in books, and, you know, it's, you know, kind of, I guess, pitting that against what people think that they know of the tribe. But, I mean, just think about all the different things of our tribe that have never been seen before that are, you know, that are in this film. And it really gave our tribe a sense of pride. You know, it opened up conversations between grandparents and parents and children and their grandparents. How do you say this? Because they're playing Predator and Comanche instead of Cowboys and Indians. So tell me how to say this. And when this first came out, our language department's website crashed. It was like, and they were like, Jhane, our website crashed because so many people were looking up Comanche language. And that the Comanche language department would pop up. So it was kind of a cool thing.
That's wonderful. Jhane, thank you. Yes, let's give her a hand. When I was young, we had a dog named Saudi, right? And you saw in the film, Saudi is just, that's just how you say dog in Comanche. That's what we called our dog. It's so cool to see that. You know, it's so cool to see it written down because I just always heard the words. I never saw it written down before. And one of the things that this film is at least partially responsible for is how one of my daughters came to me and expressed an interest in learning the language. So we're learning it together, right? This is something that's bringing us together, and I know you're a big part of that. Can you tell us this really funny story about Saudi in this film?
Any funny story, or you have something in particular?
Well, tell us about how you acquired Saudi.
Okay, so she was a rescue. So Disney has a whole department of dogs and animals and everything that you could use, but we had to do research on what kind of dog was like alive in the 1700s, and so for you dog lovers, it's a Carolina dog, which later, like a healer, kind of came off of that kind of breed. So we wanted to be authentic and have that dog. So the dog trainer, okay, my former assistant is here, sitting here, and he came from Canada. What was the trainer's name? I'm putting him on the spot. So he came. So the trainer found this dog because we had to look through pages of animals. We spent time just looking at all these animals. Then when you pick your animal, you have to have number 2, 3, and 4. Do you remember the names of the 2, 3, and 4? Miso, tofu, and Gronk. Remember, I liked Gronk. This is Coco. So Sadi's real name is Coco. So he came down to get Coco from the pound, I guess, or nicer, the animal shelter. And he had called and said, we want this dog, because it was online. And they were like, okay, we'll hold her for you. When he came down, he lives like in Sacramento. When he came down, the dog was gone. They were like, oh, that dog's been adopted, because it was during the pandemic and people were adopting dogs, right? And so he's like, oh no. So then he calls us and he's like, we're gonna have to look for more animals because Sadi's gone, they adopted her. And we're like, someone else already adopted her. And we're like, oh no, what are we, so we're like, oh my God, now we have another day to look at animals again. And the next day when he got home, he got a phone call and they're like, are you still interested in that dog? Because whoever adopted her returned her because she's a very spirited animal. And I guess they may have had a small like apartment or something, and she was probably just jumping all over everything because look how she was amazing. And so he was like, hold her, I'm coming down. We said, go get her. So the same time that the characters had their boot camp and training, so did Sadi. She had her training. And when Amber finished boot camp, then she worked with Sadi herself. And then part of the thing was to show a bond between them. So Amber would wear glasses, but with the lenses punched out, and then it had a nail poking out. So the trainer would put like a piece of steak on the end of the glasses. And so Amber would have them on. She's like, this dog's gonna bite my face. And she would look at the dog, and that's why you see the dog looking at her and looking at her so lovingly. And then when he would say, okay, then the dog was able to get up there and pull the meat off the glasses, and Amber would be like, oh my God. So it was great, and she was amazing, as you can see. She's amazing. And the dog trainer fell in love with her, and then he adopted her when the show was over.
Do we have time for one more, or are we ready?
I think I'm ready.
Oh, you're ready?
Oh, you're ready?
He was talking to her.
Oh, no.
What, do you remember the dog trainer's name?
I'm glad you're ready.
You're not ready.
Okay. So, thank you, that was good. So as an artist, I'm just amazed at the creative process that artists in other mediums possess. I can't even imagine what it would take to make a film, where you would even start, how that process would work out in your mind. Virgil, when you put together this film that accompanies your exhibit in Miami, take me through that process. How do you come up with this idea? How do you get it into something that's presentable? What happens?
Yeah, most of the time it's just being guided from our ancestors, because like I didn't go to school for anything, so it's just basically just what they always say, sweat, blood, and tears to figure something out. But listening to be able to channel or listen to the spirits that are around you, looking at your community, trying to give back to them, trying to work in education to it, and then also the people you surround yourself with, your team. Like it's like what ties us all together, and we understand what we're trying to do is just educate globally about who we are, that we're still here. But to have all of this and like to just always acknowledge that it's there, I think it's so easy for me to come up with different ideas. Sometimes I'll wake up and have a visitation and just say like, okay, like, mom or dad came last night. Now I know what the direction I have to do, so I don't ever doubt what is in my head. And it's just kind of funny because I have to explain to my team, like Tish, my manager, she's like, wait, what are you talking about? What are you gonna create? But the creatives on in my team, like Patrick Lockman is one of the sound design people, musicians and actors as well. I explain it to them, and we just all deep dive and just sit there and create, and you just feel the love and that whole, and you know what's right. So I don't ever doubt where the inspiration comes from. It's everywhere.
Thank you very much. Now I want to give you a chance to ask some questions. So we're going to have a little bit of time for Q&A from the audience. So if you would like to ask a question, raise your hand. Come on, do we have a microphone? There we go. Okay.
You can.
Yes.
All right. Oh, sorry, my friend.
Hi, first of all, beautiful film. When I saw the film on Hulu, I did some research, and I believe I recall that a lot of the cast were not Comanche, they were different tribes, and that they had to learn the Comanche language. Can you discuss a little bit about that? Because I remember that some other tribes said, we don't make that kind of sound, or the little, I guess, colloquial kind of things were kind of foreign to them. So that's kind of interesting, because I'm sure people think that, you know, a native language is all the same, and it's not, right?
Right. It's Native people, like in the films, people try to see us and think it's like pan-native, right? And we didn't have any, because we shot it during the pandemic, and we had to live for 6.5 months in Canada. So unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of Comanche people that were on the film. But coming back, we were able to include a lot of tribal members, you know, in some of the edits. But our language is different. So our language base is Uto-Aztecan. So we have, and you can probably speak to this too. So we have a commonality with the Shoshones, the Utes, and there's like a lot of words that are the same, you know, with our language base. And what other tribes are there that have similar to us? Do you know off the top of your head?
Shoshone, Ute. Well, we come from Shoshones, Ute, Paiute.
Oh, Paiute,
Yeah.
yes, that's right. Yeah, so we have that same language base. So, yeah, it's kind of difficult, and it's kind of sometimes like a tongue twister, I think. I don't know, it's not to me because I've heard it all my life, and I was raised by my grandparents, so it's not hard, but Dakota was having trouble when we were doing this, and he's like, because Dan had them audition in English and audition in Comanche. So when they were auditioning, not only did they have to learn their part and try to put that physicality and put that feeling into it, but they also had to do it in Comanche. And I know that Dakota was having a problem, and he was like, I just can't get it, Jhane, it's just too tough. And I said, you're a singer, aren't you? And he said, yes. I said, so when you're looking at it in practice, sing it. And then when you're giving your lines, slow down and then just say it. And he was like, so that's when you work with people in languages, you have to figure out what is their learning method, because people have all different ways, and they have different ways of writing phonetics too. So they all had to kind of figure out their own way. And for him, that was the one that I remember right offhand is having him sing it. And so then he was able to speak it. And he sounds so good when he says it. And his favorite line, he still remembers when they were tied to the tree, and he says, what is it? Pasaquita, which in our language means that's some crazy, you know what? But he that's the only thing, like he'll go, hey, and he'll tell me that. And I'm like, do you not remember anything else from this whole movie? But he remembers, you know, the crazy shit line. So it's like.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to ask a question? We have a hand over here?
Hi, good evening, everyone, and good evening to you, Mr. Virgil Ortiz. I wanted to know, have you guys made contact with the heads of the school boards to create more representation of Native American culture, specifically starting here in Los Angeles with LAUSD?
I haven't yet, but I love to do a lot of lectures and workshops with ceramics, and that's where it all starts out with. And I love working with students, and every chance that I get to do a workshop, I always feel that I'm going to meet somebody that will become or get on our team, and it always works like that. The last time I did it was in Saddleback College here in California, and I was trying to learn how to do 3D modeling, and one of the students that was really good at sculpting turned out that he was a 3D modeler. So I came back here and I rented a B&B for a month and had him over, and he just taught it to me. So like he's now on the team now, but I mean, it always reaches out to everything, but the heart and soul of everything I do is clay. So that's where it all starts. And those are always possibilities to reach out to universities like that.
Yeah, there's a big call that's needed within our unified school district to create representation of Native Americans. There's a big presence of African American culture, which then dissipates our existence even on our own land. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thanks for that information.
I can say real quick, as a result of this film, now in Comanche County, which is where the Comanches are from, but in that school district in southwestern Oklahoma, they do teach Comanche history as part of history in all of the grades, which is like amazing. And it only happened after this. I'm not saying this caused it, but.
I know you're here to hear these two individuals speak, but I'm part of a group. I teach at a university in San Diego County, and I'm a part of a group that does curriculum development for San Diego County Department of Education. And we do workshops. We do California Indian Education for All. We have resources for school teachers throughout San Diego County, but we have teachers that get on from statewide all over California and even from other states as well. You want to know how to teach Native topics, we'll give you the books to teach those, primarily books written by Native authors, right? So I'm a part of a big movement there, but this is not my time right here to talk about this. Let's have some other questions.
I think that's amazing, just because like when we do work with or do workshops, so I have them make a piece of pottery that is like, say, a runner from my script. So then you get the chance to be able to educate them as well as doing a lecture, so they get a whole lesson like that, and that's really fun to do.
That's wonderful. I saw a hand here.
There, look, to the right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
Tracker.
First of all, thanks for not killing the dog. That's always hard to get over. No, I really enjoyed the film, and I just wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about the sister and brother, about Naru and her brother, because I thought they were really awesome.
Thank you. You want to know about them, like...
Where did you find them? How did you find them?
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, so Renee Haynes was our casting director. Well, first of all, I knew Amber since she was just a little girl. She played with my children, and she's from New Mexico, and that's where I reside, Santa Fe, New Mexico. And so I know her mother, I know her father, thank you. And so I knew Amber. Like when Amber was in school, she'd come over to the house and she would do like handstands, and she would just be on one arm, right? And she's like, I'm gonna be an MMA fighter, I was like, okay. So, you know, she was really super fit, and I knew like she wasn't afraid, because that's not like a normal role. Like every day we put her through like really difficult things, like that water was 40 degrees because it was melted snow, you know, so it had to have somebody with that physicality. So she was phenomenal. She had done, this was her first lead in a movie, and it was the first time that a Native woman had a lead in a big box, high budget film, which is great, yay. And then Dakota, who now lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico, came from Tennessee. He's a singer, and he came from Nashville. His band is called Western Boy, and he sings with his brother and his brother and father. But when we were first looking at him, we had to cast like over Zoom because it was the pandemic, right? And so we were looking, and he comes on there just like he's like walked out of a club in Nashville. And he comes walking on, and he's got like a fringe jacket on. I think he had on a choker. He just had like Dog the Bounty Hunter stuff in his hair, you know? And I'm like, and he wasn't my first choice. And Dan and I are both looking at this, right? Because it was Dan and I, you know, like trying to figure it out. And Dan goes, I like that guy. He has something. I go, how old is he? He looks, you know, too old to be, you know, like the brother. And I said, I don't know. I just don't think, you know. I said, I don't know, he's not doing it for me, I like this other guy. And he was like, well, and just so you know, before Amber, because we brought the top two, the other top person was Quanah Chasing Horse, who's like, and she wasn't Quanah that she is now, she was beginning to model, and she just didn't have like that acting experience. So because we were going to be in a secluded place, 6.5 months, hardcore. And Kwana is a hunter. She's a musher. Her mom's like one of the very few female mushers up in Alaska. So, I mean, we knew she was tough, but, you know, sometimes you don't know when you put people in these kind of situations. So, but we brought the top 4 out, and because it was the pandemic, they were like, you have to stay in your hotel room, but you have to order room service. So I said, all right. So I ordered my room service, and they're like, oh, but because of the pandemic, we can't bring it to you. You have to come down and get it. And I'm like, that's not room service. Like, so I was like, fine, I'll go down and get it. So I'm walking down the hall, and then I see this person, jeans on, boots, T-shirt, long hair, kind of just going like this, walking down the hall really tall. And he came close to me because we were going to the same elevator, and I said, Dakota. And he goes, yes. And I said, it's Jhane. I've been on the Zooms with you. And he said, oh, how are you? And I said, whatever you show up in tomorrow for your audition, wear that. Don't put anything else on. Don't be distracting. I said, you wear that. And I went back up to Dan. Went back up to the room, and I called Dan. And I said, Dan, as a woman, I reserve the right to change my mind. I think I found Tabe. And he said, who? I said, Dakota. He goes, you didn't like that guy. I said, no, but because he just had so much going on, I just couldn't get into it. And I said, but I just now saw him. He goes, you're supposed to be in your room. And I said, I know, but we ordered room service, and because of COVID, we have to go down and get our own food. And he was like, so what did you do? And I said, I asked, because the whole, like, we were in this really nice hotel, and they had a huge restaurant with like a big old patio, and it was like overlooking all this stuff, I don't know. And I asked the guy, I said, look, if we sit 6 feet apart, can we go sit at that big table? He was like, I don't care, that's fine. I was like, come sit with me. So I spent an hour with him, talking to him, looking at him, and I just went back and told Dan, you know, I think I found, this is Tabe. And he goes, but you were so against it. I said, I was, but wait till you see him tomorrow. So what does he do? He shows up, he's got on jeans, he's got on boots, just has on a T-shirt, you know, just blank. I guess it was kind of, I don't even remember what color, but he just had a regular T-shirt. So he comes walking up, and all the girls, the little PAs were like, oh, do you need some water? Do you need this? Do you need that? I was like, you know, and so, he just really like stood out, and he did an amazing audition. He had kind of some boots on, but he still was able to do the physicality test and everything. And I was like, and they looked like brother and sister. When they showed up on set for that audition, they had the same color hair, their skin tone was the same, and they're supposed to be brother and sister. And the other two kind of matched. So we had like light set, dark set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have time for one last question. Who is going to be the one? Maybe someone.
Oh, look, right there.
There we go. Right here. He's got a good-looking hat on. Oh, no.
They did? Oh.
Is this on? Okay. So, my name is Curtis. I'm Blackfeet from Browning, Montana. So I was, there's a couple thoughts that I had, and then a question at the end. As far as being, you know, native from the res, just noticing all the little things like the Venetian beads, and, you know, noticing your ermine that you're wearing right now, and these little subtle things that people carry, and that, you know, transfers into the films and the things that they make. When she whistled, you know, that for me was like the most impactful. I think I got the most chills when she whistled, because, you know, the teaching of like, don't whistle at night, but she whistled to call that bad spirit.
Right.
You know, to her. I thought that was really profound and very impactful. And when I did watch it, it was with my nieces. We had just gone up to Running Eagle Falls in Glacier National Park, and when she was getting her staff, my niece was like, "Oh, it's like Running Eagle." And the story of Running Eagle, for those that don't know, it's a woman. She was for Blackfeet and Blackfoot, we can all be warriors. You know, it's not just men being warriors, but she was denied over and over to go out to the war party until she just did it. And just that moment for her, And seeing that moment of realization and seeing it and connecting that, having just barely gone up to the waterfall where she was buried at in Montana, it was very profound. That moment for me was very profound. Being Native myself, also being Blackfeet like yourself, and seeing the transition of her, I guess, recognition of actually seeing a woman warrior. And I just wanted to share that story. You know, there's a little Blackfeet, you know, girl out there who looks up to Running Eagle and has got that connection and visually seeing that through your, you know, portrayal with Amber. And I guess the question that I had was, will the next, or what is happening next now? What are you working on? How are things looking for the future for your career?
For my career, okay. So, greetings, relatives. So, do you know any of the Blackbirds? The Blackbirds? So that's my family. My grandmother was Evelyn Blackbird Plumage. So Wendy Plumage, who teaches at the school, is my cousin. So, and I'm a descendant of Chief Black Eagle, and then on my other side, on my Grovon side, I'm a descendant of Raising Day and Thunderpipe. So my company is called Raising Day Entertainment because our ancestors never had the chance to even imagine to do what I'm doing and to have a place here and a seat at the table. So in honor of my relatives, I named my company that. So thank you. Glad to have you here. And for my career, I'm currently working on I'm almost finished with a doc on Free Leonard Peltier. So because of what happened today, there were several things that were asked of President Joe Biden. The apology, you know, for the boarding schools. Number 2 on that list is Free Leonard Peltier. And so this is a story that spans 50 years of American history that very few Americans know. And we were talking backstage because this year I was at Cannes. I'm a Gotham producer fellow, so I went to Cannes for 12 days. And when I was in Cannes, France, and I had my Free Leonard Peltier t-shirt on, and I had some postcards and stuff, and people were like, Leonard Peltier, he needs to be free. Like all these French people knew who Leonard Peltier is. And sometimes when people ask me what I'm working on, and I tell them Leonard Peltier, they just look at me blank, like, is that action? No, it's a documentary, and it's, you know, social justice. And, you know, so I think it's good that I'm able to have the career that I have, that I can do stuff like this, and then I can be able to go back and forth between independent and studio. But I want to kind of like shine a light on our issues and things and stories. We have so many untold stories, so that's what's important. Were you at the Fort Belknap parade when right after Parade came out and the float? The kids had a float and they did pray, like they made a jungle and all the girls were dressed. Yeah, so they did it, and they sent me pictures. They were like, look at this. And I sent them posters to the school as well. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of the other panelists, I'm going to be so bold as to say we really appreciate this opportunity. We appreciate the Getty taking the time to show this very important film and to put Native voices forward, to allow us to have this seat at the table where you have an all-Native panel, I think is wonderful. Thank you.
I would like to say, Uda, Eric, Uda, and then Uda Ko, which is the utmost of thanks to the Getty, and Uda Ko Kristen. And thank you, Christiane. I want to say your name right. So, and then also Hayek Kwasik, Tanamatsatsik, Akitsi, Ananamapunit, which means we're here, and now you can all see us.